so excited to talk to you today about surviving. So many of us women, what we're going through, we think we're not going to survive. And I'm here to tell you that yes, you will survive. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It feels so big, and I get it and I know it, but whatever you're going through, you can survive and you will. And I know that to be true because I've survived, and the people that I work with, the nurses, the women that I work with, they are surviving too. They've survived everything they've gone through. So I'm Karen Schaible, and I have a program, Living by Design, not by default. And I work with nurses, helping them to lose weight for the last time. The nurses and other women come to me, and they come to me to lose the weight, but what they learn is the weight is only a reflection of what's going on inside of them. And when we work on what's inside of us, then we can lose that weight for the last time. That's how I did it. At 42, over 12 years ago, I lost 100 pounds. So my passion is ending this struggle. And it really all starts with learning how to survive. So my story might not be, I always thought it's no big deal. I grew up, that's just the way it was. But no matter how big or small what's going on with you, that doesn't matter. It matters to you. It's big to you. So my story is I grew up, my dad was a Ukrainian. They were farmers. Their parents were farmers. It was, strict discipline. That's the only way he knew. And so what happened is I've always, how I became a nurse is I love helping other people. I'm a caring person, like from caring for other people. So my dad, love him to death, but he was really emotionally hard on my mom a lot. And it bothered me. So I would speak up. I would try to help her out, try to protect her. And in that moment, my dad didn't agree with that one. And so I got disciplined quite severely. The strap came out, the spoon came out, and it was quite severe. It stopped when I could outrun him. But the thing it affected me. It affected me from that moment on until I figured out how to shift all that. So going back was, I had a lot of anger growing up towards him, towards what he did to me. But I had learned over time that's the only way he knew how. And so when I started looking at that started helping me out. But it still wasn't enough. There was still so much going on inside of me. From what he did, I took that meaning on. So it was about him, but I took the meaning on that I'm no good. I'm not good enough. I don't do things well. There's something wrong with me. I took that meaning on. And so from that moment on, from a young age, from as far back as I remember, it was about age 8, from that moment on, I grew up with those thoughts. And also I didn't get the love from him because he knew no other way. And so I just craved the love. How my mom showed me love, and I know she loves me, but she showed love by giving me food to help me feel better. So I got set up at an early age, took on the meaning that there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. And food makes you feel better. So here I am going through my life, packing on the pounds, getting bullied, and just trying to hide away, because if I stood out, then I get bullied more. So I just kept hiding away, kept eating, kept feeling worse and worse and worse about myself, having no self-confidence, no self-esteem. And at 22, I had dated a couple men, But at 22, this one walked into my life. I had lost some weight, not the 100 pounds, but I lost some weight. And he, after, we only dated for, I think it was 6 months. 6 months, he asked me to marry him. And in that moment, I said yes. And you know why I said yes? Was because I didn't think anybody else would ever want me. Who would want me? Overweight, not that great looking. This is what I thought about myself, because I had no self-confidence and no self-esteem. So I married someone who was not emotionally there. It was emotionally abusive a lot. But I didn't realize that it wasn't me, it was who he was. So I kept thinking more and more, there's something wrong with me. And at 25, when I had my first child, I got postpartum depression. And from that point on till my late 40s, I was depressed, and it kept going. I kept spiraling down. I was so stressed and busy and depressed, and I was anxious, and I was getting panic attacks. The panic attacks were coming. I was quite frequently, I was so worried all the time, and it just kept building and building and building. And it came to a point at age 42 that I hit rock bottom. It was then, in that moment, when I dreaded getting out of bed. I didn't want to get out of bed. All I wanted to do was hide away. And in that moment, I thought of suicide. I thought of taking my life, because I couldn't see any other way. I didn't want to live this way. I couldn't live this way. Living with someone, I realize now that was a big part of it, but living with someone that just, there are things that happened that had me feeling so that I had no worth. I had no worth. I was not worth it. And in that moment, no wonder I wanted to take my life, because what's the point? But I'm so grateful that I did get to that point, because it was that point that shifted my whole life. Up until then, I was living, like I say, on default. I was just living. I was just going through the motions. That's what default is. Sorry. That's what default is. Default is we keep going and doing the same thing. That's how it kept compounding. That's how it kept getting worse. So at 42, in that moment, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I cannot do this. But I had to make a choice. Do I choose that, taking my life, or do I choose my children? And in that moment, I knew my answer. And my answer was, I always wanted children. My children are my whole life. And there was no way I was ever going to do that to them. And I'm so grateful that I did hit that rock bottom, because that's when I stopped living on default. That's when I'm like, I'm going to, as I say, live it by design. I'm going to design my life. I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to have the life that I want, instead of live the life that I'm in, that I keep going from day to day and just feel so miserable and so depressed. And literally, it was so heavy. It was heavy on the inside. Well, no wonder I was heavy on the outside. I used food to numb out and avoid and deny all that I was feeling, all the thoughts running through my head about myself, about my situation. And so in that moment, I decided I'm going to commit to figuring this out. And I did. I found a group coaching program called Personal Best. That changed my life. What it was working on what's going on inside our head, the beliefs we have that we think are true. So that belief I had, I fully believed it to be true, that I'm no good. I don't do good things. There's something wrong with me. I believed that to be true. The thing was, things happened to me in my life, And I took the meaning on of that, like that happening, I took a meaning on about me, but the situation was about them, not about me. That's what I've learned. And so in that place, in the personal best, I learned how to get awareness of I have those thoughts and they're not true. And what do I want to believe in that moment? That changed my whole world. That's where I learned, what thoughts can I have that can be true? Because I get to choose what I want to think. Those thoughts I've had since a child, they don't have to be true. I can have a different choice of what I want to think. And that's what I did. I worked on that. That's what I do with my clients. And from that place, I left that program being a wallflower, feeling like I'm useless, unworthy, that there's something wrong with me, being like just holding back in life, settling to getting the self-confidence and the self-esteem to leave a marriage, a 22-year marriage, ask for that divorce. Because remember, like growing up back then, I grew up with mom, very Catholic, that you don't get divorced. So I learned I don't have to settle. I can do what's right and best for me, no matter what anybody else thinks. So I left that unhealthy marriage. I kept working on myself. And from that place, I lost 100 pounds, and that was 12 years ago. But because there was still some things inside of me that I needed to work on that I didn't realize, that love part, like I felt that, like I still didn't love myself. I felt that I couldn't love myself unless I had somebody loving me. Love meant somebody else had to have me, that person had me feeling loved. So not too long after I divorced, I met another man. And after 9 months of dating, I moved, packed up, sold my house, packed up my 2 girls, and we moved 2.5 hours away. And I lived there for 6 months. And shortly after I moved in, I realized, Karen, this isn't a good experience for you. This isn't a good situation. He ended up being an alcoholic. And what ended up happening 6 months after living there was the night before he was going away on a fishing trip, him and his buddy were sitting there drinking, and his buddy said something to me. He took a meaning on with it. He put it on me. And it was my fault in his eyes. And he beat me. I ended up with a black eye, and he beat me in front of my younger daughter. And that's not the worst of it. In that moment, he threatened to kill her 2 dogs. And that was my next rock bottom moment. But that was the bottom where it was a rock bottom. It was terrible, but you know what? It wasn't actually as terrible as when my first rock bottom hit, because of all the work I did. In that moment, initially, yeah, I felt like a victim. I even had thoughts on, what did I do wrong? How can I fix this? But he left that next morning. I had a day to really get back to myself, to back to everything I learned, thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I settling? And in that next moment, I picked up the phone, I called a mover, and I moved. I packed everything up. I took my 2 daughters, and I moved into my parents' place. In my 40s, mid 40s, here I am moving back in with my parents. And if I hadn't done that work, I don't think I could have done that, because I would have let the shame and embarrassment stop me from doing what I needed to do. But in that moment, I knew what I needed, like what was best for me, but what was best for my children. Because remember, my first rock bottom was my children. They are the most important. And I knew in that moment, it didn't matter about me in a sense. It did, but it didn't. But it first was, I'm going to get them out of there. Then I'm going to start working on myself even more. So I moved back. I got to work more on that thoughts, what I'm thinking, like really diving in. And what actually I realized is with all the work that I did was I don't need somebody else to help me or to have me feel love. And that's where I work with my clients. So how I work with them, and I'm hoping this helps you, is we have a circumstance and then we have thoughts from that circumstance, and we have these thoughts, right? So, one of my thoughts is, I'm not loved. I need somebody to love me. And from that place, I had this feeling of desperation. And from that desperation, I attracted and I had met and I lived with these men that were not giving me what I actually needed. I thought they were giving me what I needed, but I didn't. What I actually learned is that to feel loved, my thought had to change. My thought had to be, love only comes from me. Yes, I want somebody in my life, but I don't need them to help me feel love. That changed everything. That thought, every time I kept repeating and I kept repeating it, initially my feeling was, really, I had a lot of doubt, but I kept repeating it and I kept repeating it. And I kept saying, what can I do for myself to feel love? I started looking at ways that fill me up, that help me feeling love. So when we change our thoughts, when we start becoming aware of our thoughts, we can start shifting how we feel. And that's what changes our actions, because we have a circumstance and circumstances are neutral. So another circumstance I had from my first marriage was, the circumstance was, he'd say something to me. So the circumstance was the words he said. And I had a thought from it. And that thought was, here you go, Karen, messed up again. You're always wrong. And I believe that to be true. I believe that to be the circumstance, but that wasn't the circumstance. It was just my thought, what I believed to be true. So when I do thought dumps, and I teach my clients about this, is thought dumps are, you take all the thoughts, all the sentences in your brain, write them all down, get them out on paper, because we can't gain awareness of them until we get them out of our head, because if they're in our head, they just swirl. Have you ever had nights where you can't sleep because the thoughts are going around and around? I had so many of those. But when I learned how to get it out on paper, write it down, get the awareness of it, and then start questioning those thoughts, are they really true? What else can I think? What other things can I be thinking? That's what changes it all, because I'm not going to tell you stop thinking what you're thinking because you believe it to be true. But what else can you think? That's what shifts it, because remember, our circumstances are just neutral. We have thoughts. Thoughts create feelings, and the feelings are what drive our actions, what we do. So when I was thinking I'm wrong, there's something wrong with you, it's your fault, and I felt terrible, I felt depressed, and I then led me to eat to feel better, that then just spiraled me down and down and down. No wonder I gained 100 pounds. No wonder I was 100 pounds heavier. But when I have that thought, okay, Karen, yeah, you have that thought, but what else can you think? My first initial was, let's take a look at what I actually did do. And then I started getting awareness. I never really did anything wrong. It wasn't what I said. It's what he thought from what I said. Then I felt a little hope. then from that place, I didn't turn to food as much. And that is how I ended up like gaining the confidence, gaining the self-esteem, stopping the emotional eating, because I started shifting my thoughts. I started feeling a little bit better and being able to find a solution that worked for me. I started feeling like I am worth it because my thoughts were more empowering. That's how we do it. We can't think, like I know a lot of you believe in the law of attraction, and so do I, and it does work. But one thing I didn't realize was when we have such a low thought, we can't then start to say this most high unicorn rainbow thought because it's not believable. It's too much of an extreme. We have to do just a thought that's just a little bit higher, make us feel just a little bit better. Those are called ladder thoughts. We go up the ladder. That's how we get to where we want to go. So what I want you to take from this, I hope, is knowing that you may think it's hopeless. You may think you're not worth it. You may even think, some of you think like I did, oh, it's not so bad. But if it's affecting you, it is bad enough to start getting aware of what's going on in your head. And if you feel that it's so bad, it's not hopeless, because you get to take control of this. Even though you think you have no power, you think you have no control, or you can't do anything about it. You can't change the circumstance, but you sure can change the thoughts and the feelings. And that's where we take our power back. That's where we have the control. And from that place, then we can move ourselves in the direction that we want to go. We can start designing our life instead of being at the mercy of the circumstance. That's how I moved from feeling like a victim. And I don't like that word in a way, but that's how I felt. I felt like I was such a victim to it all and there was nothing I could do. But I learned that no, I get to do whatever I want and get to where I want by choosing my thoughts and my feelings. And don't get me wrong, it's not all gone. The days sometimes where I'm a little sad or feeling low, but I realize one of the things I realized is it's okay to have those negative emotions. I don't like the word negative, but a lot of people, that's what we call them. But it's okay to have them, allow them, because so many things, the reasons why we end up emotionally eating is because we think they're wrong and they're bad and we shouldn't have them. But allow yourself to feel. When we allow ourselves to feel, then eventually it dissipates. Eventually then that heaviness goes away and we can find solutions. That's how we start moving forward. We move forward by realizing our circumstances are just that. It's our thoughts and feelings from that we have the control and the power with. So I'm hoping that this helps you even just a little bit. And if it does, I do have a freebie on my website, KarenSchaible.com. It's a video to help with the busy and the stress in your life, because I was one of those busy, stressed out nurses. Like I gave and I did everything for everybody else that I was depleted. I had no energy to do anything for myself. And that was the other thing I learned. I did that. I thought I was like a martyr. That's the good thing to do. But what I learned was keeping so busy was just a distraction from what was going on the inside, from looking at what was going on in the inside of me. So grab my freebie, the video, and it's going to help you get started in learning how to pay attention to those thoughts and feelings. Then you'll also get a worksheet, and the worksheet really just helps you. The worksheet goes through getting those thoughts out, finding other ways to think, just getting you aware, have different questions to get you started in making this change. What I want you to really understand is you are worth it. You are worth this. There is never, ever, ever, ever the moment where it's never hopeless, no matter how you are feeling right now and thinking. There is another way. And I did it, and my clients have been through tremendous things, and they've come out on the other side. They have survived. And if they can, if I can, you can too. So thank you.